For today's topic, I'll be talking about ransomware. And now this is a topic that I've been kind of leading into. If you saw the last couple videos that I made, this one can involve both spear phishing and encryption, but for a malicious purpose. Now, with ransomware, this is an attack that even if you're not a security guy, you've probably heard about this. If you worked in any kind of IT, maybe even if you don't, maybe even if you're on like the financial side, government side, doing whatever, you might have heard about this because this attack has been very much on the rise, very prominent today. And I think no matter what field you work in, it's good to at least have a base level of understanding of this because it's not going away. It's been very profitable for attackers, and anything that's profitable for attackers, they're just going to keep coming back to, right? Now that if you guys haven't checked out my video on encryption or the spear phishing, I highly recommend that, or at least understanding this before we go into it. So yeah, definitely give those videos a watch. Now with ransomware, basically what it is it is an attack that uses encryption against the victim, basically. So what I mean by that is first, there's some social engineering at play. However the attacker wants to go about that. If it's spear phishing, if it's just regular phishing, if it's even exploiting a vulnerability in a piece of software, system, whatever, right? Whatever means the attacker wants to use, somehow they get their virus. It's more kind of like a worm a lot of times because it propagates. A lot of times the attackers write very sophisticated exploits that will propagate through the network, encrypt all of the files on all of the systems, okay? They're actually encrypting every single file on your system or your company's system, and a lot of times it functions as a worm, which is something I didn't talk about yet, but basically all a worm is a computer virus that can self-propagate and spread through the network, okay? So the victim takes some kind of action. Maybe it's clicking a link from an email, or maybe the victim doesn't even take any action. Like I said, maybe there's an unpatched server running some kind of web server that has a known vulnerability, remote code execution or something, right? Whatever the attacker wants to use, he gets this exploit code onto the network. It propagates. Maybe it doesn't propagate, but nowadays a lot of times they write pretty sophisticated exploits that will propagate. Everything gets encrypted on the systems. Now it's kind of like it basically is a denial of service attack. Now for corporation, the corporate world, having your servers running and up and functional, that's your lifeline. That's how, in the internet age, that's how you're making money. If your servers are down for whatever reason, then that's a huge issue. So, and a lot of these attacks, I guess I will say, a lot of these attacks have been carried out against government too. So essential government systems being offline, obviously that could really impact a lot of people and be very detrimental for the government or whatever affected organization, it becomes a victim of this attack. So basically everything, it uses encryption. It uses asymmetric encryption and encrypts all the files on these systems. And so the thing about asymmetric, or maybe they use a hybrid model where, I think a lot of these attacks, because like I said, asymmetric is slow. I think a lot of them use like a hybrid implementation where they encrypt everything with a public key, the symmetric encryption, and then they encrypt that with the asymmetric encryption. So it's like double encrypted in a lot of cases. Now, how it's encrypted and stuff, that might vary, of course, from whatever the attacker wanted to use, but a lot of times asymmetric encryption is involved. Suffice to say that. So what that means is the attacker has the private key, okay? Without the private key, you cannot decrypt the files, and basically if every file on the machine is encrypted, you cannot use that machine. It's just completely unusable. Everything is basically obfuscated. Every file is obfuscated. So this is where the attackers, they kind of exert their control here, because they have the private key, and only they have the private key. And without that private key, there is no way that you're going to be able to decrypt the files to be able to use your server. Again, you just can't, because asymmetric encryption is very powerful. That's the upside. Now the attackers found a way to use that against you. That is now the downside. That is now to your detriment, because this thing, you're not going to brute force it, because this is a secure algorithm. It's an industry standard. You're not going to brute force this. You're pretty much not going to get access to your data until you get that private key, because it's secure. You can't hack it. Well, I mean, at least as far as our modern day knowledge of encryption, of like RSA encryption and technology allows right now, unless you know some crazy 0 day that no one knows about, you're not going to be able to hack this. You're not going to be able to get access to your system without that private key. Obviously, the attackers know this, and that's where they come in, and they say, oh, you want this private key, you want access to this. Okay, yeah, no problem. Just give us, $50,000, $100,000, whatever amount they are trying to hold you ransom for, and that's why it's called ransomware. It's basically custom code that takes over your system, encrypts it, everything, and then they hold you ransom. They hold your systems, your data hostage. They say, we will not give you access to your own systems unless you pay us $1 million. No, but $100 million. But yeah, there's a little Austin Powers reference there. But yeah, basically that is what they're doing as the attackers. And so this makes for a very tricky situations for these organizations. I mean, of course, in a perfect world, no one would pay, and the attackers would be like, "Oh, no one's paying. This isn't profitable. I'm going to not use this attack anymore because I'm not making money off it, right?" But of course, we live in a messy world. We do not live in an ideal world. So a lot of times, I mean, what are these companies going to do? They, like I said, this is a secure algorithm. They have no choice other to get hold of that private key, or just cut their losses and say, we're going to have to spin up new systems for everything and all our data is gone, which that can be very, very detrimental to a company here in the internet age. So what a lot of companies are actually doing in response to this is they're actually building offline backups of all their data, because in a lot of cases these ransomware attacks are sophisticated enough to even encrypt the backups. So it's not enough just to have backups, which a lot of companies have. Of course, the attackers know that a lot of companies have backups, so they write them in ways a lot of times they can even encrypt the backups. So it's kind of experimental, but what some organizations have been doing is they've been creating offline backups completely off the network, replicas of the current environment, and probably periodically keeping that up to date so that in the event that something like this happens, they can still have at least some access to the data, right? And they can kind of spin things up again and give the attackers the middle finger. So that's what's going on with the ransomware. Now, a lot of companies, as you might guess, a lot of companies are paying in order to get their key back. And even when you pay, you don't know for sure if the attacker's gonna give you access to your data. You just gotta kind of use the hope and pray method. Now, I will say a lot of times attackers have been doing it, because if you think from their perspective, they want to uphold their end of the deal at least some of the time, because they want to be able to keep doing these ransomware attacks in the future. Now, if they never paid, or if they never gave you access to your data after you paid, then no one would pay. So they want to make sure that you at least have that glimmer of hope and you might pay them, so this attack vector can continue to be profitable for them. So yeah, I hope this was of help to you guys to really break down ransomware. Very prominent today, as I said, not going away anytime soon. A lot of times attackers have been trying to target governments with this, especially because take some essential shit off the network offline, you know, completely encrypted. Yeah, you bet some people are going to be panicking, and it's going to affect a lot of people. And the more people that are affected by this and the more money is on the line, the more likely the attackers will be to get their payout. So yeah, hope this was of help, and let me know if there's any questions on the comment section below. I will see you in the next video. Later.